Welcome to Night Veins, where fear finds you. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and join us as we bring you spine-chilling true-style horror from places you thought were safe. Tonight's video contains 10 terrifying stories, straight from the heart of Appalachia, realistic encounters you'll never forget. Let's begin. I stopped dead when I heard it's someone breathing, slow and heavy, just inches away on the other side of the restroom door at the back of Dollar Tree. It wasn't the hum of pipes or the rattle of old ventilation. It was human, thick, deliberate, ragged. Each inhale pressed through the thin wood like whoever was inside had their mouth right against it. The store was supposed to be empty. It was nearly midnight, Appalachian backroads outside silent, the parking lot deserted except for my car and my manager's beat-up truck. I'd been closing alone, finishing drawer counts, when I walked back toward the restroom and froze at that sound. I stood there for a moment, hand hovering near the handle, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But the breathing shifted, like whoever was inside adjusted their weight and leaned harder into the door. I whispered, "Hello." My voice barely carried. The breathing stopped, then came back, sharper, louder. A shiver ran all the way down my spine. I backed away, scanning the aisles, but the store was dead quiet. The lights hummed above me, the coolers clicked, but nothing else moved. I forced myself to step closer again, palms sweating, knees weak. I reached out, barely touching the metal handle. It turned easily under my fingers. The door wasn't locked. I pushed slowly. The door opened just an inch before something resisted from the other side. Air rushed out warm and stale, hotter than the rest of the store, and in that crack, the breathing hit me full force, raspy, uneven, like it was happening inches from my face. I dropped the handle instantly. The door slammed shut. My pulse roared in my ears. Someone was in there, holding it closed. I stumbled back, nearly knocking over a rack of candy. "Who's in there?" I called louder this time. No reply. The silence stretched on, heavy, suffocating. I spun around and hurried up front. My manager was behind the counter, hunched over his phone, scrolling like nothing in the world could bother him. "There's someone in the restroom," I said, out of breath. I heard them. "They're standing behind the door." He sighed like I'd interrupted his favorite show. "Ain't nobody in there. Door don't lock. Keys right there." He pointed lazily to the hook by the register. Sure enough, the giant bracelet key was hanging there, a chunk of wood attached with men scratched into it. I felt sick. If the key was there, who the hell was inside? I heard them breathing. I insisted. I pushed the door. They were holding it shut. He groaned, slid his phone into his pocket, and stood. "Fine, I'll show you." I followed him reluctantly down the aisle, my hands shaking. He didn't hesitate, grabbed the handle, yanked it open, and flicked the light on. The restroom was empty. Small, grimy sink, one stall, nothing else. He looked at me, smirking. "See, ain't nobody here but us." I stood frozen in the doorway. The air inside was thick and warm, like someone had been standing in that tiny room moments ago. My skin prickled. He muttered something about city kids scaring themselves and walked off. I lingered just long enough to glance at the corner of the stall. The dust on the floor had been disturbed, a faint footprint near the toilet. Too fresh. I locked my jaw and walked away. I wasn't using that restroom. The rest of my shift felt endless. Every time the cooler rattled or a shelf creaked, I jumped. My eyes kept darting to the back hallway, convinced I'd see that door move again. When we finally closed, I couldn't get out fast enough. The parking lot was empty, only one buzzing light above my car. I hurried across, fumbling with my keys, heart hammering like I was being chased. I locked the doors as soon as I slid inside. I sat there for a moment, breathing hard, staring at the dark store. The front lights flickered, casting faint shadows across the aisles. Then, movement. A figure darted across the end cap near the toy section. Tall, thin, too fast to be my manager. Before I could process, the overheads clicked off, row by row. The store went black until only the exit sign glowed faint red. I started the engine and pulled out. The Appalachian highway stretched ahead, twisting between thick woods. No houses, no traffic, just endless black. My headlights carved a narrow tunnel through it. 5 miles down, I checked my rearview headlights, a single pair, following at a steady distance. I slowed slightly. They slowed too. I sped up. They stayed right behind me. My chest tightened. My hands shook against the wheel. Every turn, every hill, they clung to me. Too close. I pulled into a turnout, pretending to check my phone. The headlights rolled past. Slowly, it was a truck. Old, beat up. No front plate. Windows tinted too dark to see inside. It didn't stop, just kept rolling until its taillights disappeared around the bend. I waited another 5 minutes before pulling back onto the road. Heart still racing by the time I reached a bigger town. I was trembling so hard I could barely steer. I pulled into a brightly lit gas station, parked under a security camera, and finally let myself breathe. I sat there replaying it, all the breathing, the door, the empty restroom, my manager brushing it off, the figure inside the store, the truck that followed me. That's when I felt something crinkle in my pocket. I reached in and pulled out a slip of paper. A Dollar Tree receipt. I hadn't printed one before leaving. I knew I hadn't. But there it was. Time-stamped 15 minutes after we'd closed. At the very bottom, beneath the blank lines and store header, were 3 words typed in neat block letters. I hear you. The paper shook in my hand. I looked around the gas station lot. No one was there. No cars had followed me in. I still don't know how that receipt got into my pocket. I never went back to that Dollar Tree. And to this day, when I stop at late night, stores along empty Appalachian roads, I keep the windows rolled up, the doors locked, and I never, ever open restroom doors if I hear breathing, because someone was behind that door, and I'm afraid they're still out there, waiting for the next person who stops to listen. The register spat out a receipt, even though I hadn't rung up a single item, and at the very top, in bold letters, was my full name. I froze with the slip pinched between my fingers, my chest tightening. There were no purchases listed, no totals, just the Dollar Tree header, and then my name, letter for letter, staring back at me. I was alone on the late shift at our little Dollar Tree tucked in an Appalachian town where nothing ever seemed to happen. The clock had just pushed past 11:30, the front doors dead-bolted, the aisles empty. I was running the drawer counts before closing when the printer hissed and forced that receipt into my hand like it was trying to get my attention. I stared at it for a long time, telling myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe the system glitched. Dollar Tree registers were ancient. Half the time they froze when you scanned more than 5 cans of soup in a row. I crumpled it and tossed it into the trash under the counter. But when I looked up, the register beeped again. The screen flashed. Transaction approved. My stomach dropped. I hadn't pressed anything. No card had been swiped. No buttons hit. And yet, another receipt fed through the slot, curling slowly into my hand. It was identical. Store header, blank space, my full name. I dropped it like it burned me. I stood there staring at the machine. The sound of the ceiling lights buzzing louder than usual, every shadow in the store pressing in. I wiped my palms against my jeans and told myself to breathe. Maybe the system remembered an old receipt where I'd typed my name for inventory logs. Maybe it was printing it by mistake. There had to be a reason. I pressed no sale and the drawer clattered open. The machine purred and spat another slip. This one stretched longer. Letters repeating my name across every line like a chant. Over and over, top to bottom, my name, my name, my name. The paper kept feeding, piling against the counter, spilling onto the floor. I slammed my palm against the power switch. The screen went dark. The receipt stopped mid-print, half my name hanging in jagged ink. The silence that followed was suffocating. I stood there, frozen, listening. The hum of the coolers, the faint squeak of the exit door as the wind rattled it, the buzz of the lights, all normal, nothing out of place. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I bent down, scooped up the scattered paper, and stuffed it into the trash bag. I tied it shut fast, like that would trap it inside, and dragged it into the stockroom. That's when I heard it. A faint shuffle from one of the aisles, not the settling creak of shelves, not the compressor kicking on. Actual footsteps, dragging slowly across the tile. I froze, heart hammering. I had locked the doors. No one else should be inside. Hello. My voice cracked. The shuffle stopped. I waited, every muscle tensed, ears straining. Nothing. I grabbed the heavy metal flashlight from under the counter and started down the main aisle, my sneakers squeaking with each cautious step. I swept the beam across InCap's empty checkout lanes, racks of cheap toys and cleaning supplies. The store was empty, but when I turned back toward the register, my throat tightened. A fresh receipt was waiting in the slot. I hadn't turned the machine back on. I approached slowly, my legs like lead. I reached out with the flashlight, nudged the slip free, and lifted it into the light. This one wasn't like the others. At the top, it listed a purchase. One customer. Total $0.00. At the bottom, in the space where a cardholder's signature would go, was my full name again. Only this time, it wasn't printed. It was scrawled in ink. Handwritten. My grip loosened. The paper fluttered to the counter. My knees nearly gave. There was no pen near the register. No way anyone could have written it. I spun, scanning the store, convinced I'd see someone crouched behind a shelf, hiding in plain sight. But every aisle was empty. The silence pressed heavier than before. I couldn't stay another second. I grabbed my bag and bolted for the door. I fumbled the alarm code with shaking fingers, yanked the lock, and shoved into the night air. The parking lot stretched quiet under a buzzing light. My car sat alone at the far end. I jogged across the cracked asphalt, my head whipping side to side. The Appalachian trees loomed just beyond the lights, black and endless. I unlocked the car, slid in, and slammed the door. My breath fogged the windshield as I jammed the keys into the ignition. But before I started it, I saw movement in my rearview mirror. A figure, tall and thin, standing just beyond the edge of the light near the tree line. Watching, I blinked. The figure was gone. I started the car, my hands trembling on the wheel. Gravel crunched under the tires as I pulled onto the empty road. The forest swallowed me in darkness. the highway winding endlessly through the mountains. A few miles out, my headlights caught something fluttering against the windshield, a piece of paper tucked under the wiper. I slowed, heart slamming. I pulled over, stepped out, and snatched it free. A Dollar Tree receipt, the same as before, but this one had no header, no totals, just 4 words typed across the center. "We see you too." I dropped it like it was on fire, stumbled back into the car, and peeled out down the highway. My eyes burned with fear, my chest tight. I never went back to that store, and I never told anyone, because even now, I don't know which. Scares me more that the register somehow knew my name, or that someone else in that empty Dollar Tree did. I knew the store was empty when the cart screeched my name from the front. End cap, because I was the one who locked the doors. The sound didn't come like normal wheel squeal. It carved through the aisles in 2 harsh strokes, a dragging note for the first syllable and a shorter grind for the second. And it was so close to my name that my fingers slipped off the box cutter. For half a second I told myself I'd imagined it. Then the squeal came again, same rhythm, same ugly scrape, like the front wheel was being forced sideways just to etch letters into the floor. I was alone for close Appalachia, a Tuesday night, so quiet the highway outside sounded like a river. Dollar Tree's lights hummed, the coolers clicked in the back. I'd turned the key in both deadbolts at 10:01, tugged the glass door twice out of habit, and flipped the sign to closed. The whole little ritual that means you and the aisles and the buzzing ballast are all that exist until the drawer balances. The manager had gone home an hour earlier to fix a fuel pump on his truck. That left me with a rolling ladder, 3 flats of paper towels to zone, and a store that suddenly felt too large for one person. The third screech didn't even try to hide. It dragged across the tile right between checkout 3 and the impulse rack, a sound so physical it made my teeth ache. I peered around the end cap of plastic bins and froze. One cart had drifted 6 feet out from the corral and was sitting catty-corner in the lane. The front wheel angled hard left, a black crescent scar printed on the floor behind it like a tail. I saw that cart earlier. I remembered the wobble. I'd shoved it deep in the line so customers wouldn't fight over it. It couldn't have rolled itself out like that. The floor was level, the AC barely moving the air. The only way that wheel makes that kind of mark is if someone drags it sideways. "Hello," I said, then louder. "We're closed." My voice sounded weird in the empty. Stort to bright, like it bounced off the pegboards and came back thinner. No answer. I waited 5 seconds, then 20. Nothing. I set the box cutter on a shelf and grabbed the heavy maglite from under the counter. When my thumb clicked it on, the beam fell across the cart's wire basket and caught something dark smeared on the wheel housing. Grease. Fresh. It glistened. I swept the light down the main aisle. Slow. Breath held. Seasonal. Empty. Toys. Neat. Cleaning. My half-sewn shelf, waiting with broken-down boxes stacked like small tombstones. The restroom hallway sat at the far corner, light off, door closed. The beam jittered with the shake in my wrist. I took a step, and the back of my shoe squeaked against tile loud enough to make me flinch. Then another sound, not a squealcloth brushing, a soft bump, a cart kissing metal. I cut the maglite toward checkout to the end of lane 3. A second. Cart edged forward and stopped like it had been nudged and then let go. I didn't see a hand. I didn't see movement. I just saw the little shimmy carts do when a person pushes and releases. The deadbolt was still set. I checked it twice without taking my eyes off the floor beyond the counter. The keys trembled in my fingers. The alarm pad blinked green behind the register. The night setting armed for exit, not for interior motion. We didn't have motion sensors anyway. Corporate never paid for that in our town. We had cameras, though, 4 on the ceiling grid, 1 pointed at the doors, 1 at the registers, 1 down the main artery, and 1 toward the stockroom door. The monitor was tucked on a metal shelf in the little office behind the greeting cards. If I wanted proof I wasn't losing it, I needed to see the feeds. I started backing toward the office, flashlight beam wide. The cart in lane 3 shifted, a hair to the left, front wheel yawing until the rubber groaned. The beam caught scuffs on the tile just behind it, 2 crooked lines intersecting at an angle, like the start of a letter. It would be nothing, just random, if the sound hadn't already shaped itself to my name. I made it to the office door and shouldered in. The smell hit first old coffee and the sour of cardboard. The tiny CRT hummed on the shelf, for black and white squares, grainy as snow. On feed 1, the parking lot showed empty asphalt and a moth smearing itself across the lens. On feed 2, doorcam, my closed sign hung backward in dull white. On feed 3, registers 1 cart parked in the middle of the lane to check out, crooked. On feed 4, the main aisle, nothing moving. I stared at feed 3. The cart I'd just seen in lane 3 wasn't there. I blinked hard, thinking I'd mixed up the lanes. On the live screen, the cart stood in lane 2, yes, but it faced the wrong way, like it had been spun to aim its basket at the impulse rack. My own reflection ghosted in the office window. I turned my head toward the floor. Out on the other side of the glass, the cart had not moved. Not even a fraction. On the monitor it shivered and rotated half an inch. The wheel juddered and ground. I heard nothing through the glass. I felt it in my teeth. "Stop," I said to the empty office. It came out thin, embarrassed. The tiny speaker in the monitor clicked and played a smear of static, like somebody breathed into a microphone. Feed 3 stuttered 2 frames and smoothed out. The cart sat still again, angled, patient. I stood there listening to the hum of electronics and my own pulse. They always tell you to call someone when you're scared, so I thumbed my phone awake and stared at the signal bar. 1 sliver, then none, then 1. It had done the same dance every night for a week. "Mountains don't care if you need help, okay?" I said out loud. "Okay?" Talking made it feel like a plan existed. The plan: go to the front, straighten the carts into the corral, belly the noisy one deep so the bad wheel can't swing, put a wedge in front so nothing rolls, and finish the counts fast. On the way, check the restroom hallway, check the stockroom door chain, check the rear fire door bar. The rules are so simple you can carry them in your mouth like a prayer. I stepped back into the store. The maglite washed the registers and then the cart. Close up, the rubber scar, red, darker than the tile, almost black-blue like bruised skin. Beyond it, the second cart stayed in place in lane 2, basket yard, waiting. Utility noises performed their small orchestra. Cooler compressor, light ballast, the intermittent trickle of the restroom sink that never seals right. I breathed. I kept moving. When I reached the cart, I put both hands on the handle. It felt warm, not room warm, skin warm, like a person had just gripped it and let go. I dragged it back into the corral, bumping wheels into wheels until I made a solid tangle of metal. I took a floor wedge from under register 4 and shoved it down to block the first wheel. Then I walked to lane 2 to do the same. The second cart didn't wait for me. It rolled a foot on its own, front wheel kicking sideways, and scratched a line across the tile that bent hard at the end. Another line joined it from the upper left. Together, they made the start of a letter I knew too well when I saw it written by strangers on forms. I flung the maglite beam at the nearest aisle, heart in my throat. Nothing pegboard, stuffed animals with shiny stitched eyes that look like they watch you. I swallowed and grabbed the cart handle. It yanked forward an inch like someone tugged from the other side. I gripped tighter, dug my heel, pulled it back, shoved it into the corral, jammed a wedge. I didn't let go until the metal rammed the stack and my palms hurt. Enough, I said. My voice bounced back small. I needed the back checked. When you feel hunted, you don't leave doors unchecked. The hallway to the restrooms waits like a throat behind aisle 8. I forced my feet there under a ceiling light that flickered enough to make my stomach sway. The men's door stood shut. The women's stood ajar a hand width, the dark inside flat and thick. The breath memory from a different night hit me like a cold wave and left gooseflesh wringing my arms. I gripped the maglite tighter and kicked the women's door with my toe. It banged the stopper and swung back. The light inside sputtered on mirror, sink, stall, nothing else. I held the handle and leaned in. The smell said lemon cleaner and old mop water. Silence said, "You're being dramatic." I closed it, checked. The men's empty, too. My lungs started believing when my ears wouldn't. The stockroom door at the end of the hall had a latch around a loop of chain that ran through the crash bar. I tugged it. It held. I tugged again, harder, put my shoulder into it, like they taught us, and felt the solid steel resistance you only get when the bolt is set. Good. Something slid in the sales floor. Not a squeal this time, but the dry whisper of rubber over tile. Slow, steady, like a person taking care not to make noise. I killed my breath and listened. The sound came from the main aisle up front, toward seasonal. I turned my light off without thinking and let my eyes adjust. Then stepped into the dim store, lit by the register's distant glow. I never realized how loud my own shoes are when I try to be quiet. Every step complained. I walked the outside edge of the aisle to use the kickplate's shadow for cover, then leaned just far enough to see down the main run. A third cart stood alone, right in the middle, perpendicular to the flow, handle turned toward me like an invitation. The skid line behind its front wheel curved neatly into the letter A. I didn't move for a full 10 seconds. My hands had started to shake hard enough that the flashlight beam would give me away if I clicked it on. Silence layered itself thicker and thicker until I could hear the blood in my ears. "Who's there?" I said, and the air swallowed it. A whisper came from 2 aisles left, not a word breath, shaped like vowels without consonants. The hair on my neck tried to pull me backward. I stepped out anyway because the part of me that clocks in every day doesn't know how to quit. My mouth said things I hoped would sound like authority. "Stores closed. I've called the police. You need to come up to the front with your hands visible." I hadn't called anyone. The whisper stopped. The cart moved. Not much, an inch. A pause. Another inch. The front wheel skated sideways and made the left leg of the next letter. I watched the line connect. I watched my name form itself on a floor I mopped twice a week. The neatness of it made my stomach twist. Somebody knew my name. That part wasn't hard. My name tag is pinned to my chest. I'd had a guy fix on it earlier that evening. A tall man in a dirty ball cap who asked where the earplugs were and then repeated my name. So much, it turned into a sound and not a word. He bought nothing. He hung around the end of aisle 9 long enough that I walked twice to the break room door, pretending I needed to check schedules. When he left, he stood on the sidewalk with his hands deep in his jacket and looked back through the glass until I had to pretend to call someone on my phone to get him to move. People like that come in. People like that leave. We say have a good night, like a spell, and let the door swallow them. He could have slipped back in when a last-minute woman returned a picture frame at 9:58. He could have stood between freestanding shelves as customers cleared, and I locked up. He could have crouched in seasonal behind the inflatable reindeer box and listened to me turn the key. I let the idea in, because it was better than the other one. "I'm calling now," I said, and I started to back toward the office. The cart's back wheels jumped like somebody put weight on the basket. Then the whole thing lunged forward with a hard, scraping shriek. I ran. The aisle edge kept me from cutting left. I hit the open space at the front, and a fourth cart slammed off the end cap in front of me with a clang that rang up into the lights. I dropped the mag light. It bounced, rolled, and spun the beam wild. In that crazed circle of light, I saw a shape move between toys and party tall. Narrow, a flash of jacket, an angle of elbow. Not a ghost, not a trick of the ballast. A person, slipping from one shadow into a darker one with patient practice. "Get out here," I shouted, voice breaking in a way that told him more about me than I wanted. "This isn't funny." Silence, again, so wide it hurt. The carts sat where they had settled, for metal animals facing random ways. I could hear my breath, now high and fast. I forced it lower. I walked half-crouched to the maglite, snagged it, brought it up, washed the beam, slowly across the aisles the way a person uses a paint roller. I kept the light moving, never letting it freeze on the same spot too long, never giving a hiding place a chance to know where I was looking next. In the office, the monitor clicked and lost feed 3 for 2 seconds. When it returned, the cart lines on the tile made the third letter clean. I didn't go to the office. If I got in there with the door shut, and if he was already between me and the front, I'd be a bug in a jar. The exit was out there in the open, yes, but glass doors mean visibility. If he cut me off, we'd both know it. If he chased me through glass, the cameras could see that through the night, I made the decision the way you step off a high rock into cold water, no thinking, just force. I sprinted for the entrance. My fingers found the pad by muscle memory, punched the code, and the deadbolt clicked back like a small prayer answered. I threw the door open, and the night leaned in cooler, cleaner, full of mountain, dark that actually felt safer than the fluorescent air behind me. I didn't go all the way out. I put one shoe on the sidewalk and kept one heel on tile and looked over my shoulder into the store. I know better than my own apartment. The carts didn't move. The aisles held their breath. "Hey," I shouted into the dark lot. "I need help here." The highway hushed like a sleeping animal. A hand pressed the black metal push bar of the stockroom door at the back of the store, far away and small. It didn't open the chain held, but the push was firm enough that I heard the bars spring, squeal. Whoever was back there wanted me to know they could touch the only other way out. I stepped all the way onto the sidewalk then. The glass door swung half-closed, and for a strange second I saw my reflection in it. Pale eyes, wide, and behind that, layered like a cheap special effect. The aisles and the carts and the dim end caps where 99-cent glow sticks hang. The carts made their last sound together for short squeals that overlapped like badly played violin notes. I didn't wait to watch the next letter form. I pulled the door shut and turned the lock and dialed 911 with my thumb as I backed away. Signal held 1 bar. Then 2. The dispatcher asked for the address and my name. I told her both. Saying my name out loud made the hair on my forearms stand up, like I'd handed it out to the night for anyone to grab. The officers took 9 minutes. I watched the glass the whole time, sure that the silhouette would appear. No one did. When the cruisers rolled in, lights throwing blue on the trees, they cleared the store in a slow, practiced pattern. I went in behind them because I needed to. We moved together down the main. They checked the restrooms. They checked behind every gondola. One of them pressed the stockroom bar, and the chain knocked the door, solid and boring as steel. No one waited behind it. Floor's a mess, the first officer said, pointing with his chin. I looked down at the scuffs, the intersecting arcs of black where rubber had dragged. They weren't random anymore. They were letters running from the registers toward the middle of the store, big and ugly and slanted. My first name scrawled across 5 lanes. "You see anyone leave?" the other asked. "I saw a shape," I said, and my voice sounded too small to belong to an adult. "Earlier today, a guy kept saying my name off the tag. Tall, ball cap." I locked up with everyone out. I don't know how anyone's been in here since. They pulled the camera drive and left me with a case number and a promise to check our lot footage against a list of trespassers they both knew by nickname. When they'd gone, I stood under the buzzing lights and let the quiet settle again around my shoulders. The scuffs would take hours to buff, and tomorrow customers would wheel over them without noticing, and that felt wrong to the bones. I finished the count with my hands still shaking, then sat on the low stool behind Register 1 and stared at the dead monitor shelf in the office. The officers had unplugged the DVR and walked it out under an arm. The office looked smaller without the humming screen. The silence in the building felt heavier with no machine to fill it. I told myself the rules again. Routine is a rope you can hold when your brain slips. Black bag the trash, roll it to the back, drop it in the big bin inside the stockroom because we don't take it to the outside corral after close. I lifted the bag, tied it twice, and walked the hall, mag light bouncing against my thigh. The stockroom felt different with the chain off the bar. The officers had left it hanging open like a necklace unhooked. I slid it back through and set the clasp. I breathed, long and steady. I turned to lift the lid of the inside bin. A cart stood in the aisle between bulk paper and the receiving door, handled toward me like an arm. It hadn't been there when we cleared. It sat 10 feet from the rear crash bar, wheels straight, no scuffed line behind it at all. I stepped backward, and the bag's knot slipped under my fingers and thumped to the concrete. I didn't pick it up. I left the chain where it was, walked back down the hall, and didn't look behind me. Because some choices are the only power you have left. I locked the register drawer and set the alarm and walked out under the buzzing sin and kept walking across the lot until the highway sound swallowed the store noise. When I glanced back from the far edge of the asphalt, the glass doors reflected the interior like a flat pond. For a heartbeat I thought I saw a cart glide past in the reflection where no floor exists to roll on. I slept with the TV on and my shoes by the bed. In the morning, the manager called to say the police couldn't pull anything clear from the camera drive, static and streaks, lick. The phone rang for the 3rd time, and when I picked it up, all I heard was breathing slow, steady, right against the line, I pressed the receiver to my ear harder, straining, but no words ever came. Just that faint rasp, like someone holding the phone close enough that I could almost feel the exhale against my skin. I slammed it down, chest pounding, and stared at the beige plastic thing on the nightstand. Its red message light blinked once, then went dead. The room smelled like old carpet cleaner and cigarettes. The wallpaper peeled in the corners, and the air conditioner rattled like a train under the window. Appalachia in late October gets cold at night, but I didn't dare turn it off. The hum filled the silence between those calls. I told myself it was a glitch, maybe static on the motel's old switchboard. The clerk had been weird when I checked in, a thin man with stringy hair, who stared too long at my license and repeated my last name under his breath like he was practicing. I should have turned around and slept in my car in the Dollar Tree parking lot across the highway, but I was too tired from the drive. Now I wished I had. The phone rang again. I froze. It was past midnight. No one should have been calling me except the front desk. I forced myself to answer, hand trembling. Hello. Nothing. Just the same heavy breathing. I slammed it down harder this time. The echo in the cheap motel room made it sound like a gunshot. I paced for a minute, running both hands through my hair. My reflection in the dark TV screen looked pale and drawn. The phone rang again. I yanked the cord from the wall. The ringing died instantly, leaving a silence even heavier than before. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. That exhaustion from closing shifts at Dollar Tree had caught up to me. But when I turned toward the window, I saw movement in the parking lot. A figure stood under the buzzing light, half hidden by the shadow of a dented pickup. Thin frame, stringy hair. The clerk. He was staring up at my room. I dropped to the carpet, crawling under the window frame so he couldn't see me. My pulse roared in my ears. I waited, holding my breath. When I finally peeked again, he was gone. The lot was empty. I told myself to leave. Just grab my bag, get in the car, and drive until I hit the next town. But when I reached for my keys, my stomach sank. They weren't on the nightstand where I'd left them. I tore through the bedspread, checked the floor, dug through my bag. Nothing. I froze when I saw the phone. The cord was plugged back into the wall, and the message light was blinking. I never touched it. Hands shaking, I picked it up. No breathing this time, just silence. Then faintly, the sound of my own voice. A recording. Me checking in at the counter hours earlier, saying my full name out loud to the clerk. I dropped the receiver like it burned and stumbled back. My knees hit the bed frame. The TV screen across the room flickered on its own, static blooming across the glass. I grabbed my bag and bolted for the door. The hallway outside smelled of bleach and mildew. The flickering ceiling light buzzed as I crept down the stained carpet, bag clutched to my chest. Every step felt too loud when I reached the stairwell. I froze. The clerk was at the bottom of the stairs, head tilted back, staring up at me. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. I turned and ran the other way, back down the hallway, heart slamming. Every door I passed looked the same, cheap brass numbers, paint chipped around the edges. I tried one at random, locked. Another, locked. The phone in the room I'd just left began to ring. I heard it even out here, muffled but sharp, cutting through the silence. It rang once, twice, 3 times. I covered my ears, squeezing my eyes shut. When it stopped, the silence pressed down again. I forced myself to keep running. I rounded the corner, spotted the glowing exit sign, and slammed through the heavy door. The outside air hit me sharp and cold. The parking lot stretched silent under buzzing lights. My car sat alone in the far corner. I sprinted toward it, my shoes slapping the cracked asphalt. The door was unlocked. My keys dangled from the ignition. I jumped in, slammed the locks, and jammed the key forward. The engine roared to life. Relief washed over me until I saw the rearview mirror in the back seat. Half hidden in shadow lay a neat stack of motel stationery. Every sheet had my name written across it, over and over. I didn't wait. I threw the car into drive and tore out of the lot, gravel spitting behind me. The Appalachian road swallowed me in dark curves. My headlights cut a narrow tunnel, the forest pressing close on either side. But in the rear view, under the glow of the dome light, I swore I saw the top page of that stack flutter, like someone had just lifted it. I never looked back, and I never stayed in another motel along the Appalachian highway again. But sometimes, late at night, my phone at home rings once. Just once, and when I pick it up, no one speaks, just the sound of breathing. The first knock came soft, like fingertips brushing the nylon just above my head. I froze in my sleeping bag, wide awake in an instant, ears straining. For a moment, I thought I had imagined it, some branch bending in the night wind. Then the sound came against two sharp taps, deliberate, right at the flap where my head was. Tap, tap, every muscle in my body clenched. My watch screen glowed faintly when I raised my wrist. 3:02 a.m. I wasn't supposed to be out here at all. The little Appalachian town I'd stopped in didn't have cheap motels, and the one roadside lodge wanted more cash than I had. So I'd parked behind the Dollar Tree off the highway, slipped into the trees just far enough to hide, and pitched my tent. I told myself it was safe close to the lights, close to the lot, not really deep woods. Just one night. Now staring at the sagging ceiling of nylon inches from my face, I felt every mistake I'd made. I held my breath, listening. The woods creaked softly in the wind. Insects buzzed faintly. Then came a new sound, the slow drag of a fingertip or a nail, sliding down the front of my tent from top to bottom. My pulse hammered. Whoever was out there knew exactly where my head and body were. I clutched the little folding knife I kept beside me. The nylon felt like tissue one slice, and they could reach in. I didn't want to unzip, but I couldn't stand not knowing. "Hello," I whispered. No answer. No answer. The silence made the hairs on my arms rise. Then came a knock on the side near my feet, harder this time. I scrambled upright, fumbling for my flashlight. When I clicked it on, the beam spilled yellow inside the tent, but didn't show me anything beyond the fabric. I pressed the light to the wall, trying to see through. A shadow blocked it. A handprint spread across the fabric, palm flat, fingers splayed. I jerked back, choking on my own breath. The hand slid down the tent wall, then vanished. I didn't move for a long time, sitting there shaking, counting in my head. 1 minute, 2, 10. Then I heard something else. The crinkle of paper, receipts. The sound was so distinct, my stomach dropped. I'd counted them almost every night, closing Dollar Tree. The papery hiss, the folding. Out here, it was impossible. A voice rasped, low and close. "You left the register open." My skin crawled. Nobody was supposed to know where I worked. I hadn't told a soul I was camping here. The tent shook violently, like someone had kicked it. I screamed, throat raw, before I could stop myself. Then silence. I sat trembling. gripping the knife so tight, my hand hurt, until the minutes dragged past and the glow of my watch read 4 o'clock. Finally, I gathered the nerve to unzip the flap an inch and peek out. The clearing was empty. The trees swayed faintly in the breeze. The faint orange glow of the Dollar Tree lot lamps glimmered through the branches. I slipped out carefully, scanning the dark with the flashlight. Nothing but leaves, shadows, and cold air pressing against my face. That's when I saw it. Lying flat on the ground outside my tent was a Dollar Tree receipt, blank. No items, no total, just my full name typed across the top and beneath it, in shaky pen ink. 3 a.m. I spun, flashlight beam darting between the trees. But the woods swallowed everything. I grabbed my bag and tore my tent down in shaking handfuls, stuffing everything into my arms. I didn't care if it ripped. I just wanted out. I ran through the trees until I hit the cracked asphalt of the lot. My car waited under a flickering lamp. I dumped my gear inside and locked the doors, chest heaving. I sat gripping the wheel until my breath slowed. Then I turned the key. The dash clock glowed 3 o'clock, but my watch still said 4:17. My phone buzzed in my pocket. No number, no signal, just a message. Knock, knock, knock. That was only the beginning. The next day, I tried to tell myself I'd imagined it. I told my manager at Dollar Tree I hadn't slept well, blamed it on too much caffeine. But every time I looked at the register, I thought of that voice outside my tent saying, "You left the register open." That night, I swore I'd stay in my car. I parked under the lot light, reclined the seat, and wrapped myself in a blanket. The windows fogged slowly as I drifted toward uneasy sleep. At exactly 3 o'clock, the tapping started again. On the driver's side window, I shot upright. The condensation blurred everything, but the shape was clear. A hand pressed flat against the glass. My heart pounded. I fumbled the keys, started the engine, and blasted the wipers. The condensation smeared away nothing. The lot was empty. I killed the lights and sat in the dark, every nerve screaming. Then my phone buzzed again. Another text. No number. Come out. I locked the doors twice, clutching the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. I stayed like that until dawn bled into the trees. When I finally climbed out, another receipt was tucked under my wiper. My name again, this time beneath it. One word, soon. I left town after that. I told myself it was over. I drove 3 hours deeper into Appalachia, found a different trail, and set up camp in daylight. No store nearby this time, no parking lot lights, just woods, a river, and my tent. By nightfall, I almost convinced myself it had been some prank back in that little town. Some local with too much time. But at 3 a.m., the knock came again, this time on both sides of the tent at once. I screamed, lunged for the zipper, and ripped the flap open with the flashlight ready. Nothing. The forest stretched, dark and empty. I shined the beam in a frantic circle. No footprints, no figure. Then the light caught something on a tree trunk 5 feet away. A receipt pinned into the bark with a nail. My name. The timestamp, 3 o'clock a.m. and a new line typed beneath. You can't leave. I tore it down and stumbled backward, flashlight shaking. Somewhere deeper in the woods, faint but certain, 3 slow knocks echoed through the trees. Knock, 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 knock. I don't camp anymore. I don't drive Appalachian back roads at night. And sometimes, when my phone buzzes at 3 a.m., I don't even look, because I already know what it will say. Knock, knock, knock. Knew I was lost when the headlights caught the hand-painted sign nailed to a tree that simply read, "Dead End." But the GPS insisted I was going the right way. Its flat voice repeating, "In 200 feet, turn left." There was no left, just the narrow Appalachian road curling into thicker woods. My tires crunching gravel that looked less like a road and more like a driveway that hadn't seen a car in years. I should have turned back. But I'd been driving for hours after my dollar-tree shift, trying to cut through the mountains on back roads to save time. My eyes were heavy, my gas low. I just wanted the GPS to lead me somewhere with lights, maybe a gas station, maybe a diner. Instead, it led me here. The trees pressed closer, branches scraping the roof. The gravel narrowed, rising slightly, until the headlights spilled onto a clearing. And there it was, a house. Not a cozy mountain cabin, not a farmhouse, just a sagging, two-story with black windows, siding warped like skin left in the sun too long. A single floodlight glared over the driveway, buzzing with insects. The GPS chirped, "You have arrived." I let the wheels slip through my hands, heart hammering. This wasn't on the map. There was no reason a navigation app should lead me to a place like this. I shifted into reverse. That's when I saw the first figure. A man stood at the edge of the trees, half hidden in shadow. He wasn't moving, just watching. I froze, foot hovering over the gas. My headlights caught his outline, thin, long arms, head tilted slightly as if curious. I blinked hard, and when my eyes opened, he was gone. The hairs on my neck rose. I put the car in reverse, tires crunching. The GPS screen flickered. Then went black dot, the floodlight buzzed louder, and the front door of the house creaked open. I slammed the gear into drive and turned the wheel hard. The car jolted forward onto a side patch of dirt I hadn't noticed before. The tires slipped in mud, fishtailed, and straightened as I gunned it. Branches clawed at the sides, scraping metal. The dirt path wound narrow to narrow, bending tighter until I burst into another small clearing. My stomach dropped. It wasn't an exit. It was another dead end. At the far edge of the clearing, facing me directly, sat an old pickup truck. Its headlights were off, its windshield black. But I knew someone was inside, because as soon as I rolled to a stop, the truck's engine coughed to life. I panicked, spun the wheel, and floored it back the way I came. The path was tighter now, the trees crowding closer, branches snapping against the windows like claws in the rear view. The truck's headlights flared on, and they followed. I don't remember breathing. I just remember gravel flying, my hands aching from gripping the wheel, the GPS lying dark and useless. The path spit me back into the first clearing, the sagging house looming again under its buzzing floodlight. But now there were more figures, 3, 4, standing motionless at the edge of the trees, all facing my car. I swerved, missing one by inches, and shot back down the gravel driveway toward the main road. The GPS screen flickered alive again. For a second, just long enough, it displayed a message, not a map, not directions, just my name. I stared at it, chest tight. My name, bold, centered. Then it blinked out again, black. The gravel gave way to cracked asphalt, and I didn't stop. I drove blind curves at 60 tires, shrieking, until the woods thinned and lights finally appeared in the distance. A Dollar Tree parking lot. I pulled in under the harsh glow, breathing so hard I thought my ribs would crack. The store was closed, but the lights made me feel less alone. I shut off the engine, pressed my forehead to the wheel, and tried to calm down. That's when I noticed the receipt, folded neatly, tucked under the driver's side visor. I hadn't put it there. I pulled it down with shaking fingers. No items, no totals, just the Dollar Tree header. And beneath it, typed neatly, "Next time, don't leave." I dropped it like it burned. The lot was empty, silent, but when I glanced at the GPS screen again, it glowed faintly in the dark, showing a single line of text. Rerouting. The voice returned, flat and calm. "In 200 feet, turn left." I yanked the cord, ripping it from the dash. The screen went black for good, but as I sat there shaking, I swore I heard it. A whisper from the back seat. "In 200 feet." I saw him for the first time on a Tuesday, standing completely still beside the railroad tracks, just beyond the Dollar Tree parking lot, around 2:13 in the morning. He didn't move, didn't flinch when my flashlight passed over him, didn't run or wave or speak, just stood there, head tilted slightly, arms limp at his sides, staring across the tracks into the trees. I thought he might be drunk or high. I almost called out, but something about the way he stood there, frozen like a statue, made the words stick in my throat. I was on my usual late-night trash run, pushing a grey cart of black garbage bags out behind the store to the rusted dumpsters that backed up against the woods. I always hated this part of the shift. The back lot was quiet, too quiet, and the woods behind us were deep and dark and full of sounds I couldn't identify. But I'd never seen another soul back here before, until that night. He was at least 30 feet away. I couldn't make out details, just the silhouette of a mantle, maybe 6 feet or more, standing with his back to the trees and facing the old train tracks. I dumped the bags, tried not to stare, and wheeled the cart back in fast. When I glanced over my shoulder, he hadn't moved. The next night, he was there again, same time, same place. I thought maybe it was a coincidence, a local who liked to walk at night. But he never crossed the tracks, never looked at me, just stood there, locked in place. By the third night, I stopped trying to rationalize it. I told Devon, the other night shift guy, but he just laughed. "You're probably seeing shadows, man, or sleep deprived. Go home earlier." But I wasn't sleep deprived, and I knew what I saw. So on Friday night, I brought my phone and recorded it, or tried to. I stepped out with the garbage cart, aimed the camera, and hit record. The man was there, standing motionless again by the tracks. But when I checked the video inside, the screen was black, audio only, and in the audio, under the hum of insects and wind, I heard something that made my stomach drop. 3 slow knocks, knock, 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 and then a whisper I couldn't explain, my name, spoken slowly, like someone dragging it through their teeth. I didn't show Devon. I didn't know how to explain it. The next night, I decided to stay inside. No trash run. I made up an excuse, said I'd hurt my foot. Devon didn't argue, but at exactly 2:13 a.m., the power flickered, just once. All the lights buzzed off for 3 seconds, then snapped back on. In that silence, I heard something outside, a thump, a dragging sound. I grabbed the flashlight and ran to the back door. The cart was sitting there. The trash I hadn't taken out had been dumped into the dumpster already. And next to it, on the wet pavement, was a Dollar Tree receipt. No items, just the timestamp, 2:13 a.m., and beneath it, in shaky black ink, the words, "We cross tonight." I didn't sleep after that. When my shift ended at 3, I drove straight home and locked my doors. But I couldn't stop thinking about the tracks, the figure, the receipt. Saturday night, I called out. Devin covered. I told him I was sick. Around 2:20, my phone buzzed. It was a text. No number. Left your post. Then another. Not done yet. I didn't reply. I didn't sleep by Sunday night. I had to go back in. The manager, some guy named Keith, who barely showed up, would've fired me otherwise. Devin was off, so it was just me. I almost made it through the shift. I avoided the back door. Didn't take the trash out. Didn't even look toward the rear cameras. But at 2:12, I heard it. The train whistled low, distant, echoing through the hills. Only, the trains hadn't run through here in over 7 years. The tracks were rusted. Still, I heard it. And then the lights flickered again. I ran to the door, opened it. He was standing closer now, right on the edge of the tracks. Still not moving. But he was no longer alone. There were 2 more figures behind him. Then 3, then 5, all standing in total silence. I stepped back inside and locked the door. I watched the security feed on the monitor above the register, but the cameras glitched, turned to static when they came back. The screen showed only one thing, a single frame of me standing outside the dumpster, facing the tracks. Only, it wasn't me. I hadn't gone out. I hadn't stepped into that frame. But the person in the image wore my uniform, my name tag, even had my stance. I unplugged the monitor. At 3:03 a.m., the building trembled slightly. Not like an earthquake, more like a long, heavy vibration under the foundation. The receipt printer behind the counter spat out a slip. I hadn't rung anything up. I walked over, hands shaking. The receipt read, date, Sunday time, 3:03 a.m., cashier. John items, grocery total, minus 970 notes. You're already with us. I left everything behind. Didn't clock out. Didn't lock up. I drove 4 hours east and never looked back. Now, I work at a small grocery in another Appalachian town, far from those tracks. But I still get the texts, same number. Always, at 2:13 a.m. last night. It said, we will cross again soon. I checked my phone's location history after that. It showed a GPS ping. I didn't recognize right behind my current store, near a set of old unused tracks. I walked out back in daylight. There, pinned to a tree, was a receipt stamped from my old store, and beneath it, a line of ink, you never left. He was standing there again, same place as the night before, motionless by the rusted railroad tracks just past the Dollar Tree loading dock. Facing my direction like he'd been waiting. I didn't want to believe it. I'd just finished my shift, dragging a bag of trash to the back dumpster behind the store. It was 11:17 p.m., and all the lights from the store had gone dim. The Appalachian woods were already swallowing the sky. But there he was, silhouetted in the same spot where the train hadn't run in years. He didn't move, not an inch. I stopped dead, the garbage bag dragging across the asphalt behind me. There wasn't enough light to make out his face. Just his posture, upright, hands by his side, head slightly tilted like he was listening, watching. The first time I saw him, I thought it was a fluke, some hitchhiker or local drunk loitering by the tracks. But this was night 3. Always the same time, same place, same silence, and he always vanished when I blinked. I stood there, frozen, my breath fogging. The trash bag slipped from my hand. Something about him never felt quite human, not ghostly, just ... wrong. I turned back toward the store's back door, locked already. The only light came from the Dollar Tree sign out front. Too far to reach me back here. My car was parked around the side, maybe 40 feet away, but to get there, I'd have to turn my back on him. And I didn't want to do that again. Last night, when I tried to ignore him and walk away, I swore I heard gravel crunching behind me too close, too fast. When I'd whipped around, nothing was there, but my car door had been open. I never leave it open. Tonight, I backed away slowly, 1 foot at a time, keeping my eyes on the figure. Still, he didn't move, not even to breathe. I got in my car, locked the doors, and sat there, staring out the windshield at the tracks, empty. He was gone. The next morning, I tried to laugh it off, told myself maybe I was overtired, that working late nights at Dollar Tree in a dying Appalachian town will do that to you. You start seeing things, shadows in corners, shapes in fog. But that day, something new happened. I was restocking shelves when I saw a customer holding a receipt. Her hand was shaking. "I didn't buy this," she said. "Look." I glanced at the paper. No items listed. Just the store header, and below it, in the cashier line, my name. That part wasn't strange. What was strange was the message typed at the bottom. "All trains return eventually." I took the slip from her. "What does that mean?" She shrugged, visibly disturbed. "I don't know. I just came in for shampoo." I crumpled the paper and threw it away. But all day, I felt like I was being watched, from behind the shelves, from across the aisle. Every time I turned, no one was there. That night, I finished closing alone. Everyone else had left early. The manager forgot to take the trash, so it was on me again. I hesitated at the back door, hand on the knob. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't want to go out there, but I did. And sure enough, when I stepped onto the cracked concrete by the dumpster, he was there. The same silent figure, same spot, standing by the railroad tracks, just past the edge of the woods. Closer now, half the distance from before. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I stared, heart thudding so loud I couldn't hear the wind. A faint whistle pierced the air far away. Then again, closer. A train, but the tracks had been dead for years. No engine ever passed. Still, the sound grew louder. A low rumble joined it, and the man on the tracks raised his arm, slowly, not waving, just pointing at me. I turned and ran. I barely made it to my car before the lights behind me flickered, every bulb behind the store stuttering and dying out one by one inside the car. I locked the doors and gripped the wheel. I didn't drive, not yet. I looked up once more. He was standing next to the dumpster, his face now visible in my mirror blank, not featureless, just blurred. I don't remember driving home. I must have, but my next memory was sitting on the floor of my bedroom, still in my uniform, holding a receipt I didn't remember printing. It said, "Train arrives at 3:03 a.m. Boarding you." I tried to quit. I told my manager I couldn't work nights anymore. I didn't explain why. She didn't ask, just handed me the next week's schedule. Every shift late night, as if I hadn't said anything at all. The next night, I parked in a different spot, farther from the tracks. Didn't matter. At 11:17, the power flickered. Every shelf light in the store dimmed. Aisle 3's camera monitor glitched, showing static. And when I stepped into the stockroom, the small radio we keep for background noise clicked on by itself. Soft, static, then a voice. Mail. Low. Repeating one sentence. "All aboard." I unplugged the radio. The voice kept playing. The power cord wasn't even connected. I dropped it and ran through the front, out the sliding doors to my car. My keys were already in the ignition. I never leave them there. I drove straight to the sheriff's office in the next town over, told them everything. They didn't laugh. They didn't believe me either. But the deputy asked one question. Did you say the railroad by Dollar Tree? I nodded. He leaned back, scratching his jaw. Back in '94, a conductor died there. Train derailed, whole crew gone. No one found his body. I didn't answer, he continued. They say he never left. People see him sometimes on foggy nights, standing by the tracks, waiting for something that won't come. I left without saying a word. My last night at Dollar Tree was the worst. I'd already packed my things, planned to leave town the next morning, but I had to finish one final close. I stayed inside until 1 a.m., pacing the aisles, avoiding the back. But the lights began flickering again. Every screen glitched. My phone died at 99%. And then came the sound, low, distant, mechanical, the whistle, soft. Then louder, louder. The floor began to vibrate. I bolted out the front, heart hammering, and there, past the parking lot, past the Dollar Tree's rear fence, the train tracks glowed faintly under a pale silver light, and he was there again, closer than ever, right on the edge of the lot. I could see his eyes now, black, reflecting nothing. In his hand, he held something, a slip of paper, a ticket. I turned and ran for my car, but it wasn't there, just tracks, and the sound of an approaching train. I don't know how I escaped, or if I did. All I know is I woke up in my bed the next morning, mud on my shoes, train grease on my uniform, and a receipt folded under my pillow. Blank. Except for one line, final boarding, 1 seat left, and the time stamp, 3:03 a.m. He didn't flinch when my high beams hit him full in the face. Just stood there, right in the middle of the 2-lane Appalachian highway at 2:17 a.m. His shoulders squared, head slightly down, arms hanging at his sides like dead weight. I barely had time to swerve. My tires screeched on the wet asphalt as I veered onto the shoulder, the edge crumbling under me. I came to a shaking stop, heart in my throat, engine still running. When I looked back, he hadn't moved, still standing there, same position. He wasn't hitchhiking, wasn't lost, wasn't even looking at me, just rooted to the road like the highway belonged to him. I couldn't see his face, just the outline of a man in a flannel jacket and boots, soaked from the rain. My brain told me to reverse, drive back to town, report it, do anything except sit there watching him. But my hands were glued to the wheel. Something about him felt wrong, not like a threat, worse, like he'd been waiting for me. I'd just gotten off my shift at Dollar Tree in Wetly Springs, a forgotten little town tucked deep in the Appalachian mountains. Night shift, dead quiet. I'd stayed late to help my manager close, then hit the road trying to make it back home across the county line before 3 a.m. This stretch of highway was familiar to hours of dense trees, no lights, and no cell service. A place where fog sank low and curves appeared out of nowhere. But I'd driven it 100 times. Tonight felt different, even before I saw him. I had that feeling you get when you know someone's watching you, like something was pacing your car in the woods just out of view. I waited 1 minute, then another. Still, he didn't move. I cracked the window. Rain drizzled in, The only sound was the ticking of my cooling engine. "Hey," I called. "You okay?" Nothing. He didn't even turn. I turned my headlights off for a second, just to see. The darkness swallowed him instantly. When I flipped them back on, he was gone. I blinked. Then the passenger door handle jiggled. I screamed and scrambled for the lock. Heart racing, locked. Thank God. I looked out the window, but no one was there. No footsteps, no sound. Then I saw the smear, a handprint, on the inside of my windshield. I floored it. The tires spun on wet gravel, then caught traction. I tore back onto the road and kept going, not daring to look in the mirrors. Mile markers passed like ghosts. My wipers thumped furiously. I tried my phone again. No signal. My radio burst to life. White noise, then silence, then a voice, faint male, repeating one line, "You should have stopped." I ripped the knob off, trying to shut it. I thought I was hallucinating, lack of sleep, stress, some prank. But when I got home and opened the glove box to grab my insurance papers, there was a receipt, Dollar Tree, from my store, only one item, passenger, $0, timestamp, 2:17 a.m., the exact time I swerved to avoid him. I didn't sleep that night, didn't go to work the next day either, but I had to know. I checked the security cameras outside the store. Nothing abnormal, no strangers, until I reached the back dock feed. There he was, standing at the edge of the shadows by the dumpster. Same flannel, same boots, not moving, just waiting. He stayed there for 4 hours. Then at 2:16 a.m. he vanished. One frame, he was there. The next gone. I asked around town, described him vaguely. Flannel jacket, boots, mid-50s maybe. Mrs. Colvin, who ran the antique store 2 shops down, got real quiet. "You saw him?" she asked. I nodded. She stared past me, like remembering something she'd buried. "My brother hit a man on that road years ago," said the guy. Just stood there, didn't flinch, wore a red flannel. "The car went right through him." "What happened to your brother?" I asked. She paused. "He disappeared 2 days later. Never found the car either." I stopped driving that stretch at night. Took longer routes. Things settled for a while, until I had to cover another late shift at Dollar Tree. It was pouring, and I forgot to fill gas earlier. My GPS rerouted me back to the same highway. I told myself it was fine, that it had been in my head. But at 2:17 a.m., I saw the same figure, standing in the middle of the road. This time, he turned his head and smiled. I swerved again, harder than before. When I opened my eyes, my car was in a ditch. Windshield cracked, blood in my mouth. But no one was on the road. Only a fresh receipt in my lap. Same format, only this one. Red, passenger, accepted total TI meter. Tow truck driver found me hours later, still gripping the receipt. He didn't ask questions, just helped me out and drove me back into town. When we passed the tracks near Dollar Tree, he slowed. "You believe in warnings?" he asked. Maybe. He nodded toward the trees. "Sometimes they take the shape of men, but they're not." I didn't reply. I couldn't, because the figure was standing behind the tree line again, watching. I moved to towns over. Transferred stores, still Dollar Tree, still late shifts, but never the same road. But I kept finding receipts, tucked in my locker, in my coat pocket. Always blank. Always at 2:17 a.m. and last night. The final one showed up. No TIMSTMP, just 2 words. Now boarding. The first footstep hit gravel around 11:43 p.m. slow, heavy, deliberate. I was alone in my camper. Parked deep in the Appalachian woods, engine off, phone dead, listening to the rain bead against the roof in a rhythmic whisper, and then, crunch, right outside the back window, 1 step, then silence. I sat up in my bunk so fast, I smacked my head on the cabinet. The kind of sound I heard wasn't from a deer or a bear. It was heel-toe human, and it wasn't the first time. This was my 3rd night up here, what was supposed to be a peaceful solo camping trip to decompress after 3 months of late-night shifts at Dollar Tree. The store had just laid off half the night staff, and I barely dodged the cut. My head was wrecked. I needed isolation. The guy at the gas station in Hartville gave me directions to an unlisted spot for off-grid camping. Said locals used it for fishing or to get away from the world. It was remote, all right. 40 minutes from anything paved. No bars on the phone, not even satellite radio. I didn't see a single person after I left the last trailhead, so there shouldn't have been footsteps. I waited, breath tight, eyes locked on the window latch. No movement, no voices. I was about to talk myself down when it came again. Crunch, crunch, this time closer. Slow pacing outside the camper circling. I slid out of the bunk, barefoot on cold floor, and reached for the drawer where I'd stashed my flashlight. The camper creaked under my weight. Whoever was out there heard it. The footsteps stopped. My flashlight clicked on, and I moved to the kitchenette window, keeping low, nothing but darkness beyond the glass. But I felt it, someone was watching. I stayed frozen for what felt like 20 minutes. Rain tapping the roof, wind brushing tree limbs against the sides, then a soft knock right behind me. I spun. The back door vibrated with the impact. Just once not hard, just intentional knock, then silence. I didn't sleep. I stayed up the whole night, flashlight in hand, listening. There were no more knocks, no more footsteps. Just the oppressive silence of the Appalachian dark by sunrise. My nerves were shot. I opened the door and stepped out, expecting to see boot prints, but there were none. No scuffs, no dents, no muddy tread. I walked a full circle around the camper, clean like no one had been there. I told myself I was exhausted, that isolation was making me paranoid. Still, I packed up to leave. But when I turned the key, the engine wouldn't start. Battery, fuel line. I didn't know. I was stuck, and the closest town, Wetly Springs, was 14 miles back through a winding trail. No cell service, and no guarantee someone would even be there when I arrived, so I stayed another night. I spent the day trying to read, to calm my nerves, and just before dusk, I found something tucked under the driver's side wiper. A Dollar Tree receipt, faded, water dash wrinkled, no items listed, just a timestamp, 11:43 p.m., and one word typed where the store address should have been. Listening, I hadn't brought anything from work with me. No bags, no receipts. I sat back inside the camper, doors locked, windows latched, heart thudding. This time I stayed in the front seat all night. Holding the emergency hatchet I kept under the sink, the footsteps came again. Exactly 11:43 p.m. Only this time, they didn't stop. They walked the full perimeter. A slow lap around the camper. Once, then again, each loop closer, until the gravel wasn't crunching anymore, just soft thuds on soil right below my window. I held my breath and didn't move. At 3 a.m., they stopped. When I stepped out after dawn, I expected to see the woods the same way they always looked. Instead, someone had used their finger to trace my name in the fog on the back window. Letters smudged, but unmistakable. I cleaned it off immediately, then set off on foot, determined to find help. But every path I took seemed to loop me back toward the campsite. Every trailhead that should have led out brought me back to the clearing, like the woods had shifted by day 3. I was rationing food, couldn't start the camper, couldn't leave the forest, and that night the knocking returned. But not at the door, from beneath the camper. A single knock every few minutes, like someone tapping upward from under the frame. Then came breathing close, so close it fogged the glass from the outside. But when I whipped the curtain back, nothing, no face, just a fresh receipt stuck to the pane. It wasn't from Dollar Tree this time, it was from a gas station in Hartville, one where the old man gave me directions. Only thing purchased, passenger drop-off, amount, $0. Oh, I didn't sleep. By dawn, the fog was too thick to see 20 feet out. I tried my phone again. 1 bar. I texted my friend Jason back home, still at site. Lost. Something's out here. Been 3 nights. No reply. Then my phone buzzed. New message. You weren't supposed to leave the store. It wasn't from Jason. I stayed up for the 4th night, armed with the hatchet, every light on inside, at exactly 11:43 p.m. Something scraped the side of the camper. Not nails, not branches, nettle, a dragging sound, like a crowbar pulled across aluminum. I screamed. No response. Just silence. Then came the humming. Low. Human. A tune I recognized but couldn't place. Then a voice. Do you remember aisle 5? I dropped the hatchet. That was my assigned aisle at Dollar Tree. At 5:15 a.m. The generator kicked on by itself, and for a split second, the camper's stereo blared. Only one line came through before it went dead again. Thanks for clocking in. Day 5, I saw movement in the trees. A person, but when I called out, they disappeared. I followed, half a mile. In, I found my own jacket, the one I'd left back in town hanging on a branch. Inside the pocket, a printed receipt with tomorrow's date, and one item. Shelter revoked. I ran back, locked myself in. It's my 6th night now. 11:39 p.m. I hear the first footsteps. They're not circling anymore. They're just standing right by the door. I can hear breathing. Not mine. Heavy.com. Waiting. I wrote this with the last charge on my phone, even though there's no signal. But if you find this message, if it ever uploads, don't go off-grid alone. Don't trust gas station directions. And if you ever hear footsteps outside your camper in the Appalachian dark, don't listen.